So today I'm going to be taking a look at the newest watch from Fair, or it was the newest watch until like a couple days ago. Anyway, this is a pretty cool watch. It is kind of pretty aggressively priced in my opinion, and let's just see what it's all about. We have a diameter of 40 millimeters, a lug to lug of just over 46, a height of just under 13, and a lug width of 20 millimeters. Some other general specifications for the watch: we're going to have super luminova for all the applied lume on the dial, and that's going to be for the hands, this little blue hour track here, or minutes track rather, and then the kind of blue surrounds for the numerals here. We also have beating within here a Sellita SW200. It's a little bit grainy, it's not the highest quality of movement, but mine's keeping at around plus 10 seconds a day, which is not the best, not the worst, but can't complain too much. We have 50 meters of stated water resistance, but it is just a regular push-pull crown. We also have a sapphire crystal that is slightly domed with a AR coating both inside and out. And last but not least, this uses a Faraday cage, which allows it to have an anti-magnetism rating of up to about 500 Gauss. And just to put that in perspective a little bit, the ISO standardized rating to have an anti-magnetic watch is about 60 Gauss. So this is close to 10 times that. Realistically, any day-to-day activities, you know, phones and laptops and kind of machinery, you're going to be fine, and it most likely will not get magnetized, which is nice. So starting off the dial here, and that's kind of something I think Fair does really, really well. They just play with colors. They play with kind of a tradition, really. They make tradition more fun, more youthful. And this is very apparent here. We see that they've done a kind of traditional, very legible pilot style. We have these classic Flieger style hands, a very traditional kind of Arabic numeral layout here. What's really nice is that we have this kind of dimensionality to the numerals. They are raised, they are three-dimensional. We also have kind of this blue coloration, which is the lume, but it is surrounding the numerals. It also matches this kind of minute track on the inside here, while the black top of the numerals actually match with like the black application of the hands here that are all done in this kind of inky tone, which you'll be able to see closer when we get close-up shots. The two things I'm not super happy about with this watch in particular is the super yellow infill for the lume and the dark blue of the pointer on the seconds over here. If they would have done this in like a light blue, I think it would have matched the dial a little bit more. And if they would have done this in like a white or a blue or just something that's not this bright yellow, I think it just would have looked a little bit more classy, a little bit more traditional. But again, Fair kind of likes to play with colors, and I do think the color temperatures match really, really well together. It is just not my idea for the perfect watch. Overall, the printing is really nice. The numerals look good. There is a nice kind of depth to the dial because this cutout section here and this technically like 3-layer dial or 3-section dial. It is really nicely done. We have the railroad track on the outside, very minimal text, which is always nice to see. And really, I have no other complaints other than the, you know, too fun of a choice for colors, I guess you could say. Zooming in here, we can kind of just see how inky and jet black the top of those numerals are, and just kind of how cool they are. They are mainly black with a little outline of blue on both the very sides as well as kind of the rest of the buildup of the numeral. And as far as I can tell, that entire blue section is lumed, which is pretty interesting. It gives a kind of unique glow to the watch. And again, as you can see here, that very nice, almost inky lacquered black look on the hands is matching the actual numerals there. Very nice continuity. There is a slight graining to the kind of white outer track you can see here, slight graining to the inner track there. All the printing is done really well. I don't really see any misprints. I don't see really any imperfections with the hands themselves. There is a little bit of lume missing, or kind of like patchy lume here towards the base of the minute hand, but it isn't unexpected at this price point, but unfortunate to see sometimes. The minute track is printed really nicely. I believe it is in like a darker blue color. I'm not 100% sure, but that's how it's coming across to me, which I guess ties in kind of with the dark blue hand, arrowhead hand there. So I guess there is a little bit of a tie into that color, but hey, it is what it is. Overall, very, very cleanly done. I think Fair did an amazing job. I think this is a great looking watch. There is a little bit of like bubbliness to some of the numerals, a little bit of like specks that look like they shouldn't be there, but honestly from the wrist it's not at all noticeable, and I think with what they did an amazing job. So moving on to the case of this watch, and I think it is kind of the simplest part about this watch, but it is also interesting. Again, we have a 40mm case shape. or just case diameter, and it is basically all dialed. It is the most minimal amount of bezel you'll probably ever see. It is pretty cool. So you get a kind of large visual presence of the watch, which is nice for those with larger wrists and nice for those of us with smaller wrists because it still is a fairly well-wearing watch. The top of the case is primarily brushed in this kind of concentric circle pattern. On this case sides, we have this high polish on the mid case. We have this kind of circular brushing on the kind of bezel here. The kind of classic Ferrer bronze inlaid crown there with the Ferrer logo. It has a nice knurling to this onion styled crown, but overall, again, the winding feel and action is a little gritty, a little unrefined, so it isn't the most pleasant experience, but thankfully it is an automatic. We do have a nice kind of little chamfer along the edges of the lugs here, and I think if you can just observe from this angle, the lugs themselves are kind of angled, so it adds a kind of unique look on wrist. And again, we have that very subtle dome to the dial there, or to the crystal rather. High polished case back. I do like the kind of logo they went here with the middle. I think it looks nice, looks cool. This kind of pattern here makes me think, wow, imagine they would have went with some kind of like pseudo guilloche or some kind of just textured pattern on the dial. That would have been pretty cool as well. But alas, it is plain, but still well done. Overall, simply done case. It is really letting the watch shine in itself because it tries to be as little there as possible. It is somewhat ergonomic, but again, I think they could have made a little bit more turn down to those lugs. But in the end, not a bad case at all. Moving on to how this watch wears. Earlier, I was wearing this gecko, or gecko. I don't know why I pronounced that so harshly the first time, but this is a pretty cool one. Jump hour. I've been looking for a jump hour for a long time, and this one fits the bill. So here we have the Ferrer on my 6.5 inch wrist, and I think you can tell it wears really, really well. It does have a pretty large dial diameter, but it's because the lugs are so short, it just looks proportional. It still works on my wrist. It doesn't look oversized by any means. I think the strap is a little bit too long, and if I was gonna keep this watch, I would probably cut the strap itself. It is a pretty nice strap. This is the Ferrer stock blue rubber strap. Nice buckle. There is nice venting on the underside. It feels high quality. Just a little long for my taste. It does have quick release spring bars, which is nice. But again, digressing and moving back to how the case wears. Feels good on wrist. It doesn't feel too large at all. I think as you can see there, although it isn't the most kind of slim watch, the mid case still does conform decently. It could be a little bit more ergonomic, but hey, I don't really have any complaints with how it wears. It still does feel nice on wrist. I still do think it does look good on wrist. And even the crown, although it is large, it is kind of proportioned in a way to where it's thinner at the bottom, so it kind of doesn't really dig into the wrist that much. So the first combo we have here is this nice kind of like heavier style mesh from WatchGecko. I don't believe they make this watch strap anymore, but Ferrer offers a kind of similar mesh style to this as standard or as a strap option, but I already had a mesh so I didn't really need it, but I'd recommend going for it because I think it does look really nice on this watch. And there we have it on the wrist, kind of an all metal look to it. Very comfortable, looks good I think, and yeah, I mean, the Ferrer one can't be that bad of a quality, so might as well spring for it. Next we have this vegetable tanned leather from Bark & Jack. This is a really cool strap combo I think. It adds a nice bright color to an already bright and fun watch. There we have it on wrist. I think it looks good, pretty good quality on the strap, so nothing to complain about there. Here we have a crown and buckle. I believe it's like a matte Supreme Nato or something like that. It's one of their newest Natos. I think the matte coloration looks really cool. It almost matches those yellow hands. It obviously doesn't, and that's why I wish they would have gone maybe for a color closer to this so it would have matched straps in this kind of khaki tan coloration more, but hey, beggars can't be choosers, and I do think it still looks nice. There we have it on wrist. Very super casual combo, but looks good. And last but never least, the Archer silicone strap off of Amazon. Like 11 or 12 bucks, looks amazing with almost everything, and this is no exception. There we have it on wrist, super comfortable combo, makes it kind of almost even brighter somehow because it just ties in with all the white on the watch, and yeah, I just really like this strap. Moving on to the lume for the Ferrer, and I think you can see it is applied extremely well. It is extremely legible. I mean, you don't even need lume on the seconds hand because you can still see it based off on the other lume on the dial. Really nice legibility. I do kind of like how the hands are a different color than the rest of the lume. I don't think it's necessarily necessary, but it still is cool. The lume is well done. It lasts for a good amount of time. It's still bright. I'm overall surprised by how bright it is considering that it's not really the full numeral, it is just kind of the sides and the under part. But it is a cool look and kind of keeps the black look about the numerals even in this lumed state, which I think is really nice. And comparing it to the classic Timex, as you can see, the color temperatures are similar, but the Fair, at least to my eyes, looks brighter, which is just great to see. Fair did a good job on the lume. They kind of delivered maybe more than they were expected to at this price point, and that's always nice to see. So going into the pros and cons of this watch, and I think kind of the first and I guess the most major pro of this watch, at least in my opinion, is the fact that it's just a fun watch. It is in kind of that palatable enough price range to where, you know, if you save a little bit, it won't, you know, completely break the bank. It also is kind of achievable for most people. And at this price range, you can really just have fun with your purchase. You can enjoy the uniqueness, the quirkiness of it, and that's a real benefit for this kind of brand and this watch from the brand in particular. Bouncing off that idea a little bit is I think this watch is just a really fun take on the Flieger Pilot style. It kind of is traditional in the fact that it uses the Flieger style hands. It has a kind of oversized dial in comparison to the case. It looks large in a way, but it also brings in, you know, fun colors. It brings in that kind of very prominent Arabic font, or really just applied numerals. It has all these kind of little almost sector field vibes to it, so it has all these tiny details that come together to make it almost a modern, again, fun update to what is almost most of the time very serious, kind of stoic model line, model series for most brands. And last but not least, there is a really good attention paid to detail. There is really nice elements on the watch that everything's done to a pretty high standard in my opinion. The kind of quality of the printing on the dial, the quality of the numerals themselves, the just kind of overall font, the colors, the thickness of just the applied elements. It all comes together to kind of create a package where you're like, yes, they paid attention to the small details. They actually went above and beyond what you kind of would expect for this price point for a brand like this, a micro brand really. So it is nice to see that Fair has taken kind of the extra step, the extra initiative that they don't need to do, and created a very nicely packaged product. So moving on to the cons, and the biggest con, at least for me, will be the yellow lumen fill for the hands. I understand what Fair was going for. They wanted to make it a fun watch, as I said before, and it definitely does that. It also makes it very legible. It contrasts a lot against that white dial, so you can definitely see the hands. But just in my opinion, the yellow is a little too much at times. If it would have gone for a more khaki tone, it would have worked better with like kind of that military feel of the watch. It would have gone better with, you know, those khaki style straps, like that one from Crown and Buckle I had on earlier in the video. It's just, I'm not a big yellow guy in general, and the yellow here, while it works with the blue, it works with the white, it just isn't something I would necessarily go for. That's the reason I'm not going to keep this watch, you know. I would have, again, preferred khaki, preferred maybe a white lumen fill, preferred even another shade of blue. For me, it just didn't hit the mark as I would like it to. Moving on to my second con, this one is, I think, a little bit more of like a realistic con, and it is the fact that the movement felt a little gritty. It felt a little bit rough. It felt unrefined. And I don't know if that's just kind of a byproduct of the fact that they went with maybe a base model movement, or the fact that they got a bad back, or mine is a particularly bad movement. I don't know. But it's definitely an area they can improve upon in the future. They can create again, they can use a higher tier of the movement. They can also be more selective with the movements they actually do take in and make sure it's not as kind of rough feeling as the one I have. But it's not necessarily a major con to the watch. It's just something I felt, something that I wish, especially with that really big crown, it almost makes you want to operate the crown and wind it and feel the movement. And unfortunately, the movement isn't a satisfying experience winding. Another slighter con will just be the fact that the mid case is a little bit slab-sided. It's not super curved. It doesn't have a lot of ergonomics to it. Maybe they just went with that for the fact that the lugs are very short. They don't need a lot of curve down. They don't need a lot of turn down necessarily. But I feel like they could have gone a little bit longer with the lugs, add a little bit more ergonomics into the mid case or the case just in general, and that would have been completely fine. The lugs are very short as they stand right now. They can easily add a little bit to them and still wear well on pretty much almost any wrist size. So that's not really a problem. I would like to see a little bit more refinement there, but even then, it still does wear well. And my last kind of point will be the fact that they use the Faraday cage inside of the watch, a little bit more anti-magnetism. I don't know how useful that is. It does add thickness to the watch. I feel like that the watch could have been a little bit more well executed if it was a little thinner, if it was a little bit more kind of sculpted. So I personally would have been okay with them not including the Faraday cage, possibly even reducing the price because they don't have to put that in there. And on top of it all, having a thinner watch, like that would have been amazing. As it stands now, it's not a bad watch. I just don't know if the Faraday cage is more of a gimmick type thing or if it's actually useful. I don't think it's that useful. I could be completely wrong, but I just don't find much use in it. I have plenty of anti-magnetic watches and they've never been magnetized, so it is what it is. So final thoughts on this watch, and as I said in the intro, this is my first time ever dealing with a Fair watch. I've always had my eye on them because they are unique. They use colors in ways that most companies don't. They have a little bit more youthfulness to their designs, and they take, like this watch in particular, kind of established designs like this field watch or pilot style watch, and they make it modern, they make it more youthful. So I think if you're looking for something that fits that bill, this is an amazing watch for that purpose. It is more fun. If it's in kind of a watch box, it will stand out. It is a unique piece. It is a fun piece. It is a piece that you can just kind of enjoy because it is quirky. And there is definitely a place for that in a lot of people's collections. I know as a kind of collector myself, I just love kind of unique pieces. It doesn't matter if it's $200, if it's $2,000, if it's really, really fun and it's really unique, it might make its way into my collection. And I think this is where Ferris stands. This model in particular, I think it's the most tame of the three in this line, but even then, it is a pretty cool watch. Overall, you're getting a watch that is, for the price, really, really well made. It has amazing attention to detail. The lume in particular is just awesome. The fact that they have it kind of like shining out from the sides of the numerals is really weird, really unique, and they've managed to execute it in a way that actually it holds a lot of the lume and still looks good. If you're looking for something that's different, that's unique, that's this watch. So I hope you got something out of the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another one.